Welcome to Detroit's Darkest Times. Today's video is about Jimmy Hoffa. And those of you that's been subscribed to my channel and been keeping up with the audios that I've been posting, I have talked about this a long time ago. But now we got more information on it. So we're going to get into it. And a lot of people's interested in finding Jimmy Hoffa's body. And also his son, James P. Hoffa. He once asked all Teamster members to try to find out what happened to his father. And so everybody's been not letting this die down. Everybody's been trying to figure out, what happened and where he's at and all, everything like that. And you got a lot of people over the years, they've just made up, I've kept up with it over the years, and people has just made up so many stories. And I'm sure the family's just getting tired of hearing that, story after story, and there's some people that's made a career out of, uh, Jimmy Hoffa's whereabouts and things like that. But here on Detroit's Darkest Times, we're not about that. We're only going to let you know the real deal. And being a Teamster member myself, I do know that, our hearts go out to his family. And over the years, we've always wanted to know where he's at. But we've always had a theory that he was at the Renaissance Center since the late 70s. And then there's been a whole bunch of people out there. Some people just, working for the press, and some people has podcasts and stuff like that, and they really think they know what happened, and they really think that old mobsters actually told them, information, and they think this is true. For one, I will let you know this. The people who got rid of Jimmy Hoffa is not going to tell anybody what they did. So the people who's been saying they know about it, or they was involved in it, or their dad told them what happened and stuff like that, that's all horse shit. You know what I mean? And still today, all them people had all that to say, and still ain't found Jimmy Hoffa. So today on Detroit's Darkest Times, we're going to put it on you. And this is what it's about. This is where he's at, and it's up to the feds to look into it, And I know they looked into a lot of theories before and digging up property and all that and come up empty handed. And, it costs a lot of money to do something like that. But they can't just say we're not going to we're not going to look anymore, because if you got some real good evidence, they got to carry it out, and they got to check into it. And, I feel like this is going to be their last thing they have to check into, if they will do it. But hopefully, for the family's sake, they will do it. And if the family puts pressure and stuff like that, it'll get done, you know. But the thing is, in the next couple of years, they're wanting to tear the Renaissance Center down. So people's going to have to act now. And I really think that the Teamsters as a whole needs to picket outside the Renaissance Center to keep them from demolishing the Renaissance Center, just until they recover Jimmy Hoffa, and then they can tear it down, But now we got an eyewitness that actually seen what happened. And see, far as I know, this is the first real eyewitness that's actually seen what happened. Everybody else is just, making stories for, I don't know, for clout, or just to, make a name for themselves, or say their dad told them, what happened and all that. Oh, that's horseshit. So really, they need to go to the Renaissance Center and retrieve his body. But like I said, the Teamsters as a whole, they need to picket outside the Renaissance Center just to support the Hoffa family, and make sure this building don't get demolished until they retrieve Jimmy Hoffa. And for many years, I'm not the only person that said Jimmy Hoffa's at the Renaissance Center. There's been several people say that. But why they never looked into it, I don't have a clue. You know what I mean? But earlier on in my videos, I mentioned Jimmy Hoffa, and I mentioned my theory was he's at the Renaissance Center. So now we have eyewitness Michael Yarborough. When he was 18 years old, he was living in Inkster, Michigan, and he told his sister that he was looking for work, and he thought about going down to the Renaissance Center. This is during construction, but they have one phase completed, and he's going down to try to get on a security job over there. Well, he drives down to the Renaissance Center, goes in the building. He asks his security guard, where's the Queen America Employment Agency at? And he tells them to go downstairs and make a right. When he goes downstairs, instead of making a right, he makes a left. He might have just got confused. I've did that many a times at big buildings or hospitals or whatever, you know. So, but anyways, he told him to make a right. He makes a left instead. Then he goes down to the end, and there's a door, and it says, you know, authorized personnel only. You must have hard hat, steel-toed shoes, and safety glasses. Well, he says when he gets to the door, he hears somebody yelling. So he opens the door. There's a walkway that goes down to the basement. So he walks down and he hears somebody yelling, "Help me, help me." And so he goes and he looks up and he sees two men holding another man. And the way he describes it is he says the men's a lot taller than him. But the story that's circulating is that they broke both of his arms, both of his legs, so they actually was basically carrying him. Not saying the two men wasn't taller than Jimmy Hoffa, but that was the theory of Jimmy being, you know, two tall men and Jimmy being short, real short. And because anybody in their right mind, if you was able to walk and use your arms and stuff like that, and they're literally carrying you to your gravesite, you're gonna be kicking and screaming and fighting and all that, and which Jimmy Hoffa was not doing. All he was doing was yelling, help me, you know. So Michael sees that, and then he says there's a cement truck, and then the 1975 maroon Mercury was there with the trunk open. So you can only imagine, you know, on certain incidents where the trunk's open and stuff, it just from what Michael's talking about, what he's seen as an eyewitness. I'm going to go back to this, but first let's start at the beginning. Jimmy Hoffa was at home on 7/30/1975. And he had pictures took of him at his home early that evening. Later that evening, he had a meeting to go to at the Red Fox on Telegraph Road. It's a restaurant. And he tells his wife that he's going to be going to this meeting and he should be home probably around 8 o'clock. And he's planning on cooking some steaks. While he's waiting on these men, they don't show up. So that's when he calls his wife and tells her he's going to come home and pick up some steaks, and then he's going to come home and cook them. And this is where it gets a little shady, but not for me, just some people. So the men show up. They just was late. They show up. He's expecting them. He gets in the car with them, and this is a 1975 Mercury, maroon in color. Gets in the car with them, and they drive from there, not to nobody's house. Like this dude's trying to make people think that they took him to a house, killed him, and then all these other theory, all these other stories, all that's horseshit. Just forget about that. Listen to this. He gets in the car, goes with him. He knows one of the guys really well, kind of like a family member or whatever. Anyways, which, you know, all mobsters are basically family members. But anyways, so he goes with them because they're supposed to have a meeting and stuff like that. Well, they drive straight to the Renaissance Center. They don't stop nowhere, nothing. They go straight to the Renaissance Center. So when they get there, they all get out the car. They're talking. They open the trunk. And there's things in the trunk that's going to end up breaking his legs and breaking his arms. And at this point, he's yelling, and that's when Michael Yarborough can hear him. And the reason he's yelling, help me, because he can't do anything. He can't stand up. He can't fight because both of his arms are broke. Both of his legs are broke. So they dragging him over, basically carrying him over to the hole. And then also there's a cement truck and there's a dude with a jackhammer. So the guy with the jackhammers, this is all planned out. They just had this plan so when he's yelling, nobody can hear him. But just so happened, Michael was close in the vicinity and he actually heard it, so he was going to try to help because he thought it was a construction worker that got hurt and he was just trying to help him. But anyways, that's when he sees them take him over toward the grave. You might as well say the grave site. And he sees the cement truck spinning slowly. And then he says he's still yelling, help me, help me. And then they throw him in the hole. So what they did is they broke both of his legs, both of his arms, threw him in the hole. And then he says the cement truck starts spinning fast and they start pouring concrete in the hole. So what they had did is they buried him alive. And then Michael says that he looks over and there's this big dude coming at him. And he's got a suit on, dark sunglasses. So just so you can picture what's going on, there's 3 dudes with Jimmy Hoffa in the car, so it's 4 of them all together. There's 1 dude working the concrete truck. There's 1 dude using a jackhammer. And that's to ground out him hollering so nobody comes to help or comes to see what's going on. But just so happened, Michael was there basically just trying to get a job. And he just walked into this situation. But anyways, he said he looked to the side and he sees the big dude and he's like 6'3". And then Michael's about 6'5". And the dude comes toward him and he says, you need to get out of here or you're going to be next. And then he takes his sunglasses off and shows him his eyes. And I would say he just had a scary look, but that ain't what Michael said. But anyways, and then he showed him his gun under his jacket. So Michael said, "You ain't got to worry about me. I'm out." And so he took off. Well, as he took off, he said he got about 15 feet away, kind of glanced over, and the guy was coming at him. So he took off running. So then what he did, he ran into a bathroom. He got away from the dude, and he ran into the bathroom because he's 18 years old at this time. And he ran into the bathroom, got stood up on the toilet, and hoping the guy wouldn't find him. So really, he was just scared shitless, if you want to be specific about it. And he had good reason to be, because if that guy would have got him, he probably would have been dead. But anyways, he stays in there for a little while, and then he comes out, and then he walks to the door. He walks down the hall to a door, and he don't know where that door is going, but he opens the door, and it's right there where the concrete truck's at. But he said the maroon car was gone. So then he went back in, ran to the other building. And the first building he was in was the 400 tower that was hiding in the bathroom. Then he ran to the 100 tower and hid in that bathroom for 5 or 10 minutes. But and he finally went out the building, and then he sees the maroon. Before he runs into the tower 100, he goes outside and he sees the maroon car going real slow around the 400 tower. So they probably was looking for him. So anyways, he gets scared and he runs back in, and he's in the 100 tower, and he goes into that bathroom and stays 5 or 10 minutes. And then he gets his courage up to get out. But then when he gets out, then he's having a hard time finding his car, because at this time he's scared, kind of shook up, nervous. And he had good reason to be, because he just witnessed a murder and a burial. But at this time, he don't know who it is that got killed and buried, and then he don't know who them guys are. But anyways, he makes it to his car, finds his car, he gets his car, and he goes home. And then he tells his sister and brother, he's like, "Y'all ain't gonna believe what I seen downtown." And they're like, "What?" He said, "I just witnessed a guy getting killed and buried at the Renaissance Center." And they was like, "What?" And so he said, they talked about it, but then they went to bed that night. And the next day, it was all over the news that a Teamster president was missing, and they were showing his picture. And he said, "Hey, that's the guy I seen get killed and buried at the Renaissance Center." And at this time, then his sister and brother says, "Well, this is the mob, so you don't need to say nothing about this, because if you say something about this, they're going to kill you and probably our whole family." So at this point, he don't say nothing, because he's scared basically for his life and his family's life. And then he waits 27 years, and then he goes and sees the feds, and he tells them his story. And I don't know what all was said with the feds and all that, but he does go to them and tell them 27 years later. And it's clear they didn't look into it because he's still at the Renaissance Center. But it could be that they thought, oh, this is just another story and stuff like that. And they done spent a lot of money looking for Jimmy's body. But you can't put a price tag on a missing person or a person that died. And you can't put a price tag on a family member that the families want closure. And so they're going to have to look into this. But if I was James P. Hoffa, I would get the Teamsters to picket outside the Renaissance Center to get them to check this situation out before they tear the Renaissance Center down. Because if they blow that, if they blow that Renaissance up, that's normally how they demolish a real tall building. There probably won't be nothing there to find. So it's real important that the Hoffa family gets closure and the feds look into this. And, there's no reason why they shouldn't, to be honest with you. And what I don't understand is, for many years, I've said he's down there. A lot of people said he's down there. His ex-driver said he was down there. And this is a Canadian cat that used to drive for him. He said he's down there. And how he knows he's down there, he wasn't there in the time in question. But the thing is, him and some mobsters had a meeting at the Omni Hotel, and they decided they're going to cross over to the Renaissance Center to go eat breakfast. And when they leave the Omni to go to the Renaissance Center to eat breakfast, they cross over, and when they cross the line, Tony Giacalone tells them, say good morning to Jimmy Hoffa, boys. So, and that's how his driver knew he was at the Renaissance Center. And he was only the driver from 1952 to 1956. He was just a driver for Jimmy Hoffa at that time. But he knows about it. And it's just weird that, they looked into these other places, people gave stories and stuff like that. And all them stories is, and this happens a lot, no matter what it is. People trying to figure out stuff, there's going to be a shit ton of stories. Everybody's got their own agenda or reason they're telling the story. And most people are doing it for money or clout or something like that. But I've always felt like that's where he was at the Renaissance Center. And I have my reasons about it, but now we got an eyewitness that actually seen it. So you got to check into this. And it's kind of part of history, but it's real important because this was, somebody's family member, somebody's father, stuff like that. So they need closure. And, as a Teamster member myself, I say they need to get it, So hopefully things will take place and they'll go down there. But what I would do is I would take old boy with me when they go, cause I would just have him down there just in case. Because once you got an eyewitness that actually seen everything that happened, and seen, he got buried alive. Saw them other theories where people said they put him in a barrel and all that. That's horse shit. And people should know that, that's these people are not going to say all that if that was what really happened. It's just not going to. They're just not going to say it. But when you got an eyewitness that accidentally seen it, you need to go with that. And I'm sure the Hoffa family feels the same way I do. Let's look into it. And because I know that they can get them, they can dig, get them, even though concrete's poured on them. Because I've seen some stories. I don't know which ones it was, FBI stories or something where somebody had killed somebody and put them in concrete, and they was able to chisel the concrete off the person and do an autopsy and figure out everything that happened. You know what I mean? So if they can do that, they can do this for Jimmy too. you know? And I'm sure his family would appreciate some closure to this, because now it's been 50 years since this happened. And it's just a hellacious story, because it's always been, I've been hearing people say a bunch of stories over the years. And, I just basically laugh at them because I know they're wrong, And since this guy came forward and he's an eyewitness that actually seen it, you can't turn your head on that. You got to check into it. And then, it's just something else. But hopefully they'll get a crew together to look into that. And so the people saying there's people got a theory that's saying there was two cars involved. One car picked them up at the Red Fox, and then they got into another car. And then one of the cars was the car that belonged to, you might as well say, stepson or whatever. So they always thought that he had an involvement in it. But the thing is, he probably did have an involvement in it. But the thing is, they used the same car. They didn't take the 1975 Mercury, pick them up, then take them somewhere and kill them, and then put them in another car, and then have these guys take them, God knows where. Oh, that's just horse shit. That's just to confuse people, And the people who's making all these stories up, it's, they just got their own agenda. And here at Detroit's Darkest Times, the only agenda we have is getting to the truth and getting to the bottom of it and finding Jimmy Hoffa. That's the only agenda we have. So, Because I know if it was my father and that happened to my father, I wouldn't give up until, you know, I would keep uh, finding out what's going on. And yeah, you want to, in order to find out what's going on, you got to hear all the different stories, and you got to, discard what you think's horse shit and what ain't, But now you got an eyewitness, and I think he's the only eyewitness, be honest with you, that's came forward. Because it just kills me when I see things on Jimmy Hoffa and people are just saying these stories, and then you got the news media. They're the worstest one that just a railroad a story where they can just keep on hanging on to the story, you know what I'm saying? And just keep on going with it and keep on going with it and stuff like that. So that's their job, just to keep making a story. And then you got people that's made a career out of Jimmy Hoffa's disappearance. So they think they're the number one person that knows everything. And that's horseshit too. Because they're saying we hear from the mobsters themselves telling us that what our information that we got come from real good sources. This is one that y'all need to look into, because this will be your last stop on looking for Jimmy Hoffa. So I just thought it was something else when the next day Michael and his family seen on the news, and then that's how he found out it was Jimmy Hoffa. And then once he seen him, he said, "That's the dude that they killed at the Renaissance Center, and that's the guy they buried." So I can see where he was coming from when he just kept it for 27 years before he actually came out with it. But it was probably eating at him, and he was probably like, "I need to say something about this, So hopefully the right people will investigate it and retrieve Jimmy Hoffa from the Renaissance Center. And it would make a lot of people appreciate, even though they had to wait, 50 years. But it's time to, put this story to bed. And if you got an eyewitness that actually seen what happened and seen that he got buried, so basically he just got buried alive is what the deal was with the cement concrete. So that being said, my calculation is it's 4, 5, 6, 7 people on the site when it took place. That's the 3 dudes and Jimmy Hoffa. That's 4 dudes in the car. The cement truck driver, the jackhammer construction worker, and then Michael himself. And I'm sure that's something to see when you're 18 years old, But me, myself, I'm from Detroit City, and I've seen a number of things. And so I know when somebody's shooting shit and when they're telling the truth. You know what I mean? It's just a gift that I've got from that city. And although sometimes when somebody says some stuff to me and I know it's horse shit, I might just go along with them just to see how far they take it. But I know when people are shooting a line of shit, or when it's the real deal. So that being said, I just hope the Hoffa family gets closure this go around, which I know they will if they'll just get in, look into it and get into it, and you got the eyewitness and all that, so you can't go wrong right there. And besides myself, there's been a lot of other people say that he's been at the Renaissance Center all along. You know, so you know, and I kind of find it odd. Nothing against General Motors, but I find it odd that General Motors ended up buying the building. I just find that odd. You know, but I guess anybody can buy a building if they got enough money. That's the situation. And the only real deal that I know they remodeled the Renaissance Center over the years, but doing a facelift and stuff like that is one thing. But where Michael Yarber said the gravesite's at, hopefully they ain't did nothing with that except for a facelift. You know what I mean? Like maybe new tile, whatever. Hopefully that's been left alone. And it probably has, not unless if they did anything with that certain area right there, it's because they was worried about somebody finally figuring out what the situation is. But if I was the feds, I'd be on top of that real quick, like before they decide, because this guy just came out, and he's talked to the feds. Like I said, 27 years later, after he was 18, he talked to the feds and told them the story. But he just can't understand why they ain't did anything about it. So this being 50 years later, and a lot of people's talking about it right now, something needs to be done. And like I said, on James P. Hoffa's side, if he could get the Teamsters to pick it outside the Renaissance Center, just so, it's going to take some stuff like that to make something happen. You know what I mean? And if he could do that and get this ball rolling before somebody tries to cover it up or whatever, it's real important that. So hopefully he can get that done, and I'm wanting to see the results, as many Teamsters are, and many people really that knows about the story and that's familiar with it. Wants to put an end to this and wants put an end to all the stories that people's telling. It's all garbage. And because all they're going to say once they find them, the people who's been making the stories up, no matter it being the press or the guy that's spent his whole career, on top of Jimmy Hoffa's story and stuff, all they're going to say is, well, I was wrong. You know what I mean? That's all they're going to say, because that's all they can say. But when there's no body yet, they could just go on and on and on and on, saying they got this information, that information. All that's just horseshit to me. But anyways, hopefully the Hoffa family can get some closure to this, and all Teamster members, and everybody that was concerned about this situation.